All right, hello. It's been a while since a podcast. Quick thought, hopefully. Not going to be paying the house off this year. This is 2019, June the 2nd, Sunday. Just got home from church. Decided that, well, kind of life decided for me because our HVAC basically went out on the other end of the house, and that was an almost $5,000 replacement. Good thing we had savings, and good thing it happened right before I put the rest of my savings on a debt payment. Here's what I've learned from this. So first of all, we've been aggressive about our house payment in two different ways. We sold my old house and have moved some of that money over to our loan on this one. Secondly, out of my paycheck, I budget first thing basically to, besides covering our bills, is putting extra on the principal. If you get the financial calculators app, it'll tell you how much you can save in interest by doing that over the long term. On a 30-year mortgage at a 4.25% interest rate in our case, whatever your interest rate, putting extra on principal, the amortization really works in your favor eventually when you get your loan down. We're in the 20 something year, about the 20-year mark. If we had paid this house just the minimum payments for 20 years, that's about where we are now in 2.5 years by paying more aggressively and saving $20,000 to $30,000 in interest. That's what we're pushing at this point. So that's kind of been our strategy. I don't like debt, and I certainly don't like paying interest to someone else. And you're paying interest for the time that you have someone else's money. So if you can shorten that time by paying off earlier, they don't get to charge you the same interest rate. I mean, continually, because once you've paid off, right? And we have a fixed rate, but we want to make it as short as possible. So we've been doing our plan, doing our strategy, and we had a vision of 2020 of paying the house off that year, which is next year, of course. If we did it March the 1st of next year, that would be exactly the 3-year mark. 36 payments should be when we made our first payment, April the 1st, 2017. It would be nice to turn a 30-year mortgage into a 3-year mortgage. That would be really awesome. So we are on track to do that unless more bad things happen. And man, it seems like everything's happened so far. All the medical we had to do with Sarah's emergency this year and surgery. Now we're pregnant. That's another factor. So medical, way more than the $3,000 deductible. We're almost pushing our $5,000 out-of-pocket max with our insurance through work. So at least $5,000 on reserve. Have your deductible, if not your out-of-pocket max, with your medical insurance. And so that's one thing I would say. Car engine blew, and put a chunk into that. Sarah actually put more than I did into buying a car that she wanted. And then I drive her clunker, and we're happy and call it a day. I'm driving her clunker Camry. It's hard to kill a Camry, and gets me back and forth to work. And the nice car is the one she drives. And then we take it out and about if we're running around the weekend. So it's kind of worked out great. And she had savings for that because she was wanting a car like that anyway. Thirdly, sunroof, etc. Thirdly, the HVAC unit, like I say, went out. So we had that replaced. So I'm glad we had savings. I feel the Lord let the bad things happen before I paid off the house, because I wouldn't have had savings. I'd have been falling back on Sarah's, the emergency fund, which she offered to do, but I don't want to take advantage of my wife. Bad things are going to happen in life, and you have to go ahead and factor it. You have to count it as if it's happening. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. Cars give out, HVACs give out, and if you're not renting and you're a homeowner like me, that's on you, right? If you're renting, there is an advantage. If you don't have savings, you can fall back on your landlord or your rental company to provide the maintenance. But I like owning because eventually the house pays for itself, basically. Not only in resale value, hopefully, but just the fact that eventually I don't have to make a house payment, whereas a renter's going to make a rent payment the rest of their life. And honestly, there's not as many repairs, I don't think, at least half to repairs, to where rent really becomes advantageous for somebody like me. So I like our strategy. If HVAC was breaking every week, we were putting $5,000 a week in it, then I'd want to rent. But life's not usually that bad. But this year has been unbelievable. So I'm glad we retained our savings. So what I would say is, if you're paying off debt, I think one of the best strategies is just budget it within your paycheck to put extra on principal, more than the minimum payment, and not necessarily wiping out your savings just to get out of debt, because bad things will happen. especially when you try to get out of debt, it seems to me. I mean, it's like, it's just been nothing but bad luck ever since we said we're going to pay this house off. So the Lord has taught me out of that life is more than just getting out of debt. It's also providing for your family. It's also taking care of emergencies when they happen. And there's some spending involved, just not luxurious spending. We want to get out of debt before we do too much luxury spending and big expensive trips. We've done a little bit of it, but because you have to have balance. I want to take care of our marriage and the morale there. So we do have to do fun things. You know, we went out for ice cream yesterday, and while it hit the pocketbook a little bit, I'm so glad I spent that quality time with my wife. I don't regret that for a second. My wife is worth it. And so everything in balance, everything, like as Sarah says, in balance, or you have to have a complete view. So we need our money to go multiple directions in life. We've got to cover emergencies. We've got to have some fun. We've got to pay off debt and assets. And of course, you got the bills. And you got giving, helping. If you give to a church or someone in need, it's important to keep that as a priority of your finances because it will give you the greatest joy. There's nothing like giving. Even spending and making money, the experts say, is like cocaine on the brain. That's actual science published research. The brain scans show that money reacts on the brain the way cocaine does in almost exact brain scans. So there's a high that comes from making and spending money, per science. However, there's also a positive high that comes from giving and helping someone else. And so I think, first of all, you earn your money. You don't expect a bunch of freebies in life. Life's not free. It takes effort. And so you're willing to put forth the effort to earn your money, because a lot of lottery winners go bankrupt. So that cocaine high on the brain really takes over when you didn't even have to earn your money. When you earn your money from the sweat of your brow, so to speak, that money is valued, right? It's tied to a value of what it took to earn it. So now it has that connection in the brain that this is money that is not free to me. I earned it. It was hard work. I had to get an education, get a job, and manage that money well and be smart with it and not get in too much debt and not too much luxury consumable spending until I have the assets I need to survive and I've paid the bills and I've taken care of my family. Then we talk about the fun stuff a little more. So again, having a balance and remembering that your money has to stretch in multiple ways, especially when you're in a low income category. We're in a low to mid income range nationally for having a bachelor's degree. Not complaining, because we learned to live on that budget, and in the South things are less expensive. So we're thankful for where we are, and really no complaints. God has been so good to us, and I'm just so thankful that bad things happened. I wanted to call it superstition. The world's against me. This is rigged. Life's against me. Nature's against me. I don't know who's against me, but why all this bad stuff happened right when I kept saying, I'm going to pay the house. I was so proud about it. And God has humbled me down and said, there's more to life. So we've got our interest down to about $57 now a month is going to interest. That's not bad on our house payment. The rest is going to principal, taxes, and insurance, which you're going to have to do anyway. So the latter two. The principal is until we pay off. So our house payment is very moderate. Only about 200 and something go to principal. Like I say, 57 going to interest at the moment, and then another 200 and change going to the escrow, like I say, for taxes and insurance. So we have a high tax rate in our county. So eventually it's supposed to go down. But anyway, it is what it is. And it's still less than $500 a month, total house payment, which is almost unheard of, even for rent, let alone owning a home. In most houses these days in the hot market, you're pushing 100 to 150,000 easy for just an affordable home. The contractors are building the $300,000 and $400,000 homes. They're not really building the affordable homes anymore. So the market's getting tighter. My concern is that pressure is going to continue whether or not we have a recession. I've kind of changed my mind about the housing market because I've been watching it for a few years, and it's just getting more and more aggressive, even to the point that people just can't even afford it. And the only thing I could see that would, if we had enough recession to where people lost jobs and could not afford these homes and they were upside down their mortgages because they owe more than it's now worth if the market goes down. And if literally we have a lot of foreclosures that come back on the market, that could bring prices down. It happened in mass in 2008. I'm not sure it would be as big. I think there's enough buyers right now that they would scoop those up And I don't, unless we had an absolute collapse in the system, I think house prices are going to stay pretty strong. They've been going up 5% a year. I don't think that's sustainable, unless the shortage just continues while we continue to have jobs. But if we have a recession, I think it's just quite a calculation going on in the housing world. And so some may say, well, should I wait and buy after a recession happens? Or am I going to miss out on, if prices are going to keep going up and we don't have a recession, the feds keep printing money to make up for things and lowering interest rates? What if houses get even more expensive and it's better to buy now than later? I mean, are the feds even going to allow a recession? Are they going to print enough money not to allow another collapse like '08 that could have become a worldwide depression? It was so bad because the whole underpinning of the credit and banking industry was about shot. So I don't know. It's gambling it when you start trying to predict the markets. That's speculation, and I don't know. I'm not an expert. I read the experts, and I recommend everyone. I read business news. I'm not much on cable news, but CNBC, at least, even though there's still going to be politics, there's a point where you get some actual facts in there, and you find out what investors are thinking, where they're putting their money. It keeps it a little more real than just opinions and analysis that you're going to get on the other networks like CNN and Fox and so forth. So I like CNBC just because at least it has a financial spin that keeps it a little more real. Still don't believe everything I read when it becomes political. But I'm reading the experts and nobody seems to know what's coming, right? It seems like the Fed is definitely playing ball right now. If Congress doesn't continue the tax cuts that lowered most people's tax rate, and those expire in 2021 or so, and then you have another election and there's uncertainty there, I could see at least stock investors putting a pause on things. They're already worried about the trade war right now. Of course, you got the Feds trying to lower, there's talk now of them lowering interest rates this year, even though they were going to raise them this year. So they're going to kind of keep the economy juiced for now, but we could hit uncertainty in the next few years. And I'm going to say something I guess I've never said before but I really think you have to have a balanced approach to the way you provide for your family. Bank accounts are fine, and having a home, car, your assets in place. A little cash in case for some reason your banking goes down. And I'm not talking about the banks necessarily failing. I'm talking about if you can't get to the bank, or there's a compromise on your card, or and you can't swipe your credit or debit or whatever. If there anything ever happened to the internet or the power industry, the power infrastructure, anything like that, and it may just be a blip for a day, or maybe your ATM machine ran out of cash that day, and like's happened in other parts of the world, and we just don't think there'll ever be a shortage of anything in America. But we're already looking at a housing shortage, and they're talking about the rental market getting hotter now. So, because again, the contractors are building the luxury apartments and the luxury homes. The affordable stuff is evaporating. So, study the markets, and I think it's okay to have a little bit of supply in your home of the things that you use daily. I'm not talking about becoming an extreme prepper and buying a bunch of stuff you're never going to use. I'm talking about the things that you use regularly, and you talk to your spouse and you say, what are the things that we constantly use in our home, the consumable goods, and why not have a month's supply just as a buffer, and make sure it's not going to expire on you. Rotate your stuff as you need to, and don't waste, like I say, a ton of money. But there's nothing wrong with taking care of your family, in a smart way. I'm not talking about becoming extreme, but it's just you're using money to buy those necessities anyway, right? And you're using money to get the assets you need. So if you can go ahead and have some of that in hand, I think it's smart. All right, well, that's about it for now. Just trying to maybe try to shorten these recordings. But study the markets, have savings, make sure you have a balanced approach to life, that you're going to need to do multiple things with your money. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's great to pay down debt, but once you've got it to a very low interest payment, make sure you're prepared for emergencies, and you're paying the bills, and you're having a little fun with your family. So this is old Dale, the attacker of debt, now saying, hey, let's do that, but let's do everything else that we need to do too, for the glory of God and for the good of our families, right? And it'll do your own heart good. It's humility. It's admitting that it's not just about my agenda to attack debt. It's also about, and the pride, or the yeah, I overcame it. It's also, and that's good in some senses, but not if you're missing out on, am I prepared for the HVAC going out or whatever. So, being a provider, and everyone provides in their own way, but being a provider, or everyone should contribute, but being a provider means looking at all the angles. And the Lord has given me a wake up call on that. And our family is a much stronger place now as a result. And I'm just going to say one more thing, just to the praise of God. When our HVAC went out, I was like, Lord, why in the world did you allow my car engine to blow, all this medical to happen, and an HVAC to go out all at the same time? And we got other house issues that we may have to address too, with septic or whatever. And I was like, Lord, why? I was about to pay the house up. I was going to do it June, this month. And I'd already gotten my payoff statements. I was ready to go. And so I was complaining to the Lord somewhat. And then I realized that first of all, he was protecting me, because I would have wiped out financially and then been in trouble, because he knew what was coming and needed to be addressed. And again, to be well-rounded, looking at all the needs. And again, they weren't needs until bad things happened. And then all of a sudden I realized bad things can happen. But when we replaced the HVAC in our basement, it's a split unit, but in the basement is where they have the central fan and all. And they put in all new ducting because it needed it. It wasn't ever done right, and our house is much better for it now. And our energy costs should go down, and we hopefully added to equity in the home. But I have more room in the basement. I ended up demoing an old staircase that led to nowhere. They got stuff off the floor. We pushed stuff to the walls that was being stored down there still. And now it's like there's more room. It helped me consolidate the space. It helped me to make it more useful. I've cleared a corner that I can use for just getting down there and reading or whatever. And so it's now more functional. And there's been some extra benefits that have come out of putting forth that expense. And the Lord just put a little cherry on top and say, you follow my will, you provide for your family like you're supposed to. No, you didn't get to pay off your house right now, but you got a plan for that. You always should have a plan for debt. Know what the payment is, know what you can afford out of your budget, make it happen before you spend the money. That's how you attack debt, right? And that's assuming the debt's even necessary. And don't get new debt until you've dealt with your obligations. I don't believe in just forgiving all debts, by the way, in this country. I think debts are a promise to pay. And if we're going to retain any kind of value in our currency, you pay what you promise to pay. And you don't just blame everybody else. So you be a responsible borrower and see if you even need to borrow that money, especially like student loans. Don't go to some college that's going to cost you $100,000 and take out a ton of student loans and then say, oh, I didn't know. Where was the price comparison at the end? Did you even need to go to that college? There's public colleges that are way cheaper. And even if you go to a certain private colleges, if you don't want to do the public route, you can still get cheaper options. You just price compare. They're out there. Same thing with houses, same thing with cars. You don't have to have everything brand new, custom, brand name. You can do price comparisons and get better deals. That's a fact. Anytime you're spending money. So be responsible and only borrow if you have to. Have a good credit score, get the lowest interest rate, make sure it's a fixed interest rate if you can, and make sure they're not going to penalize you if you pay off early. And then go ahead and borrow by bringing your initial cost down by price comparison. Only get something that costs less so that your loan payment's the smallest it has to be. Have as much savings to put down first. If you can go cash, that's even better in most cases. Just don't wipe out of your cash because, again, you're going to need it. But get your loan payment as low as you can and then put more than the minimum payment. Do double payments, whatever it takes. Pay it off aggressively and early and save on all that interest that would have been extra later. So that's how you attack debt. But again, God just put a cherry on top to help me see that there are benefits that come from providing for your family and doing what you have to do, meeting your obligations. So I just believe there needs to be financial literacy pushed in this country. We've had too much commercializing of how to waste money. It's time to know how to manage money. But right when we're at the brink of Americans really starting to wake up about student loans and just debts in general, it's like then we've got these political candidates and this wave in the country that says, well, let's just forgive debt. Let's just act like, And I know prices are too high in certain sectors. But if I'm not a millionaire to afford those prices, I don't go there. I don't tell myself that on a median income, I'm going to buy the most expensive house I can possibly afford just because I can. not knowing if my income's going to change or a recession's going to happen. There's too much risk there, too much debt involved. The prices are too high. I shop where I can afford to shop and not get all proud and greedy that I'm supposed to shop in the market with millionaires. That's ridiculous. And then put it all on debt and then have to pay it off the rest of my life and waste a ton of money in interest. No, I accept, okay? And I know this is anti-American in the American dream greed model, but I accept that I'm a lower income and I live within my means. And what I do is I save up my little cash, even from part-time jobs. I was doing this as a part-time job person before I even had a full-time job. I practice the principle of saving cash in a bank account, whatever, and then being able to buy cash. And now my wife and I are living in ways that we never were raised in. We're affording things and on a very low debt to income ratio. We're in actually a stronger place than a lot of millionaires that go bankrupt. Because they if you look at percentage, they overspend, they have way too much debt, they have assets that they're not really going to get the value out of, and they end up collapsing financially. While we on our little income are living a better life. So how about that for flipping it? But in the meantime, I don't tell myself I have to have the biggest and the best car and house or college. I go with what's affordable. I price compare and still get the best quality for my buck. And I don't get in a ton of unnecessary credit card debt and consumer debt that keeps me from being able to afford at least. I don't get the cheapest thing. I get the median thing. It still has quality. It's still going to last, but that brings the payments down in an affordable range. Just saying. Price compare. Respect yourself. You know, respecting yourself is not just getting the most expensive thing. It's getting the most manageable thing that's right for you and your family. And get your family's input and value that. And, my wife made the call on what car we got. And she made a good call, I think. So respect that. You have to respect the process. Everybody has good brains, good input. And we just need to be smart consumers in this country. Instead of just forgiving all debts, how about avoiding some of the unnecessary debts? And by the way, that will eventually lower some of the ridiculous prices that are out there in college. I don't know how these colleges charge $100,000 for a student to go there. I don't understand how they justify that. Houses that are $400,000, they're not even that great, and cars too that depreciate and they're starting out at 30, 40,000. I do not understand that concept, honestly, because I know those are probably, at least that could be a depreciating asset. So, but they're taking advantage of people that have money while they have it. And sometimes I like to imagine if I had, a huge budget. Some people have these $500,000 budget a year. They're in the top 1% of the country. What would I do with that money? Because at the end of the day, it's not how much I make. It's how I manage it. As long as I can find some things in my affordable price range. And if Americans you'll actually bring the economy to where it will be a little more reasonable. If people will just get smart with money and say, we're not paying those high prices. That will reduce demand, and the prices will have to adjust accordingly in the law of supply and demand. But if we just print more money and forgive all debts, then we just keep everything pumped up in a ridiculous level that wasn't allowed to reset in 2008, and the prices are still ridiculously high, and people suffer. And I don't like that. So let's get smart, right? All right. I'm not... I want to see people live by their brains and by character, by responsibility, and not by just freebies and ruining our currency. That's my thinking. It's not any one political viewpoint. It's just, to me, it's valuing the money that we work for. All right. See ya.